Recording live from the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, aka the baller on a budget, and you have stumbled your way into episode 66, Michelin Guide Speculation. We're also going to bring you some Las Vegas news that we thought was interesting, and of course, break down our drink of the day. But before we can get to any of that amazing, outstanding Las Vegas travel content, we have got to introduce the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas himself. Yes, of course, I speak of the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the man who is always waiting on that limo to take him away to his next luxurious Las Vegas destination. Of course, I mean Bill. Good evening, Bill. How are you, sir?
I am outstanding. How are you, John?
I'm doing good, especially because you were late, so I've had time to get a head start on the drink of the day. And
except I was late because I was at a bar for a friend's birthday party. So is what you have really a head start?
That's fair. Then we're both in a phenomenal place to start the episode. So, listeners, we originally were going to do a cocktail called the Applejack Rabbit, which is from 1927. The thing is, I made one and it was very similar to the Jack Rose, and I felt like we were going to have the exact same conversation. It may resurface in another episode, but since we just did the Jack Rose, 2-3 episodes ago, we're going to switch it around today. So we're keeping with the apple brandy. Tonight's drink is called the American Trilogy. It's a riff on an old fashioned. Here is the official recipe straight from the Laird's Distillery website. 1 ounce of Laird's apple brandy. It doesn't recommend a particular bottling, so we'll assume they mean the 80 proof. 1 ounce of rye whiskey, 1 brown sugar cube, and 2 dashes of orange bitters. Build all that in your old-fashioned glass as you would with any other old-fashioned. They say garnish with a citrus twist. I would say and or a cinnamon stick. So, Bill, let's talk about your ingredients and your impression of the drink.
So, listeners, if you are new to the Dine Drink Vegas podcast, welcome. We are so glad you're here, and we hope you will subscribe. And if you have been here for a while, you already know that I made one critical change from John's recipe. And the change that I made was I added more liquor than the recipe calls for, because that's what I do. But I use it in exactly the proportions that John was recommending. I used Wild Turkey 101, or Wild Turkey Rye. I guess it was 101, but again, not my first drink of the night. But for once in my life, I didn't use a high rye bourbon. I used an actual rye, and that's a little bit weird because I'm not normally a rye fan. I also use the apple brandy rather than the apple jack, and I thought about making that switch, but I did it exactly to spec. I don't know how many dashes of orange bitters you said to use, but I use more than that. And for my garnish, I used a cinnamon stick. And actually, before I go into my reactions to the drink, John, how exactly did you compose yours?
So here's what I did. I did use Laird's apple brandy, but I used the 100 proof bonded version. I don't have the 80 proof around. I also used the Wild Turkey 101 rye. For bitters, I used a combination of Angostura orange, not regular Angostura, Reagan's orange, and Fee's molasses. And I used about 2 to 3 dashes of each. So cumulatively 6 dashes of bitters. We've met, I like bitters. Then I garnished mine. I did put in an orange slice and a cinnamon stick. And I'm going to jump first on this. I'm going to say something I don't normally say because I like rye. And I think the last time we did an apple old-fashioned, you added a little whiskey to yours. Normally when I make an old-fashioned with Laird's, I don't add any other spirit. I really want to taste the apple brandy because I'm afraid that an assertive whiskey will walk on the apple brandy. And at first, that's exactly what happened in this glass. The best thing that happened to this cocktail is that you needed to delay recording tonight, because it gave it time to dilute with the ice. And as it diluted a little bit, the apple flavors really opened up. Believe it or not, that orange slice accentuated the sweetness of the apple. So I'm not tasting the orange, but the orange makes the apple stand out more. The cinnamon stick helped. So I will say that if I were to do this again and not want to let it sit around, I might do what you normally do and go to a high rye bourbon where there's a little less rye content instead of a rye whiskey, because I do think the rye flavor pushes the apple flavor a little bit until it dilutes and opens up. Bill, what do you think?
So that is so weird because for once in my life, I'm actually enjoying the rye whiskey here. And you and I both know that I will almost never just drink a rye the way that I will drink a regular bourbon. But combined with apple brandy and a little bit of, I use brown sugar in here, it's great. I am enjoying the cinnamon stick very much. So, John, why is it important to use the Laird's apple brandy rather than just using Applejack?
I think that's what they recommend on their website, but they don't even say whether it's the 80 proof or the 100 proof. And the Jack, the brandy, and the bonded brandy are all fairly similar. I don't know that it ultimately matters. I think this would still be excellent with Calvados. Like I said, the only thing I wouldn't do is like Crown Royal Apple, which uses that kind of Jolly Rancher apple flavoring instead of actually being made from apples. I don't know. Some people might enjoy that. That's not my jam, at least not for something like this. I just happen to love the 100 proof bonded version, so that's what I gravitate towards. But I think it would be fine with the Jack if that's what you have on hand. I wouldn't shy away from that. If you find the apple isn't present enough, go ahead and change the ratio from even to a little more apple and a little less rye. But that's going to be a personal preference. I will say, if you have molasses bitters, a little molasses bitters really goes well with this. And I did use, instead of brown sugar, I used brown allulose. So an artificial sweetener brown sugar, because I got the Beatus, which tastes almost exactly like the real thing.
Yeah, shockingly, somehow I don't have the Beatus, which means that medical science knows nothing. Mm-hmm. But I actually enjoy this drink exactly as it is, and we're recording this on December the 9th. It seems to me like the right drink for late fall, early winter, or something like that. It is appropriate to what the weather has been here in Alabama over the last week or so.
Yeah, I will say that the other recipe, and I don't know, Bill, maybe for our Christmas episode, whenever we record that, which will have to be early because I'm going to Vegas in late December. Maybe we go back to the other recipe that I had, but we do it hot, because I have a sneaking suspicion that other recipe served as a hot toddy might be the perfect Christmas drink, but we'll get to that later. Let's go ahead and dive into our main topic for tonight. Everybody and their dog has covered the announcement that the Michelin Tire Company, who's also oddly known, the know-it-alls of fabulous dining, will be preparing a new Southwest dining guide, giving Vegas eateries the opportunity to earn a coveted Michelin star for the first time since 2009, the last time the company came through and did a guide for the region. Back then, 18 eateries won a Michelin star either in 2008 or 2009 or both. However, 10 of those have since closed their doors and are no longer serving food in the valley. So here's the still open Vegas restaurants who previously won a star. I'm going to run through the list real quick and then Bill and I can discuss. So we've got DJT over at the Trump restaurant Guy Savoy, or Guy Savoy if you're redneck about it. Joël Rochebon, La Atelier de Joël Rochebon. Both of those are at different MGM properties. I think they're both actually at the Grand. Le Cirque at Bellagio, Michael Mina at Bellagio, Nobu, which this thing says is at the Hard Rock, but I guarantee is at Caesars. That list is wrong. And Wing Lei, which is over at the Wynn. So all of these locations are on the Las Vegas Strip. Well, technically DJT is a block off. So Bill, let's start with this. How do you feel about the restaurants that are on this list? Do you have any favorites on here? Anything you're not crazy about?
So my favorite on this, because we've talked about it on this podcast before ever, is Le Cirque. It is phenomenal. Several of the other places I've seen, I've been in for cocktails maybe, but I've never actually dined in the other places because it turns out I don't make that kind of money. But so listeners, what distinguishes a Michelin star restaurant from a simply good restaurant is that it's more than just good food. Like, all of these places have phenomenal food, but lots of places have great food. They also have great service and a great ambiance. So I would be delighted to try any of these places, but I go back to Le Cirque as often as my wallet allows me to do. How about you, John? I mean, I know you've been to Le Cirque. Have you tried any of the other spots on here?
No, Le Cirque's the only one I've been to, and I've dined there 3 times, and it is.
And
very
you remember
expensive.
too.
Yes, yeah, that first one's a little fuzzy. I had a fight with gravity in the men's room, and was informed that my evening at Le Cirque had come to an end. They were very polite about it, but 2 guys in sport coats offered to escort me back to my room, and I decided not to argue with them because I've watched a lot of mob movies and I know better. Well, of the places you haven't been, Bill, what on this list would you go to?
So I would go to any of them. The ones which are least interesting to me are the various French entrants, because while they are all phenomenal, I've already got a French favorite on this list, and there's some other excellent French food in Vegas that's not on this list. Like, Eiffel Tower is great. I don't think it's a Michelin star type of restaurant because it's too crowded, it's too busy, but there are other ways to get French food. I've been to some other Michael Mina products that I've enjoyed very much. I'd be delighted to try his seafood place. But honestly, I think I would go for the Asian food, either Wing Lei over at the Wynn, or else Nobu, which maybe it used to have been in the Hard Rock. I mean, you're objectively correct. It's in Caesar's Palace now.
Yeah.
So I think I guess the upshot is, if I'm going to pay that kind of money again, I want something very, very different, which implies either the Japanese or the Chinese place. Does that sort of make sense?
No, I see where you're coming from, and I don't have an objection to either one. But given my budget, I think the one I would really want to try is Michael Mina's seafood. I live in, technically it's the sub-desert, but we're only out of being regulated as a desert by like an inch of rain a year. We're practically the desert. We're a long way from the coast. Fresh seafood is a rarity in my life, and I love it. And I haven't gotten to try Michael Mina yet because when I travel with my wife, she doesn't really do seafood, and she's really not going to go someplace that's seafood centric that costs that much money, because she's not going to drop $90 on some chicken. And then it's in the same building with Le Cirque. So if I got money for a high-end meal and we're in that building and I'm traveling with my buddy Bill, we're probably going to wind up at Le Cirque. That's kind of what Bill does. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You and I have eaten in a lot of places in Vegas since 2009. Are there any locations that you think are worthy of a Michelin star that you hope that the tire people will get to and check out their next swim through Vegas?
So I've got one definite and 2 maybes. And listeners, I realize I just said this, but this is absolutely worth repeating. This list isn't places I like eating, because there are a ton of places in Vegas that are delicious and that are good meals and that are just very different experiences. So, and I've been to several more which have subsequently closed, but one place that I think is Michelin star quality would be Prime, the steakhouse at Bellagio, because while the menu is not fancy, it's executed perfectly every time. The service is high end, the decor is nice, the ambiance is relaxed, and you know what? If you're willing to wait for one of the tables outside, or they may have since gone to a reservation system, I think the experience is even better. So the one that I would definitely put on the list would be Prime at Bellagio. So John, do you want to stop and talk about that, or do you want to talk about the 2 that maybe I would put on the list?
Yeah, I have no argument against Prime. It's not on my list, but I can't argue with you. I guess I've eaten there twice. Lovely meal both times. I see your point.
So the other 2 that are super close, and I go back and forth about whether I would put them on the list. One is Border Grill. And Border Grill is down at Mandalay Bay. World-class chefs are doing interesting things with their food. Like, sure, it's Mexican food, which we all think we know, but they're doing something interesting with it. The space is really nice. The reason I can't quite get all the way to putting Border Grill on the list is that it's in a very busy space and they don't have their own bathroom. Like, let's assume, and I know you don't drink when you go to Vegas, John.
No.
You spend your whole time studying the Bible. It's what you do.
Right.
But assuming one had maybe too much coffee is what you had, and assuming you needed to get up and out process that, you've got to go across the hall, down the stairs, into the convention center. Like, if you're going to be a Michelin-starred restaurant, you need a place for the patrons to go to the bathroom. The other place that is a little bit closer is Morimoto, which is over in is over in the MGM Grand, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a different story tonight. Morimoto is absolutely Michelin star class food and service. They do have their own bathroom. The problem is that so much of it, at least up until recently, has been open to the main walkway of the MGM that it's really, man, the ambiance just barely misses. So I've got 2 honorable mentions and 1 definite. So, John, I know you've got a list. I very much want to talk about those, but what do you think about my 2 honorable mentions?
So yeah, Border Grill, I completely agree with your assessment. Listen, when you're, 4 Mexican beers or margaritas deep into your Sunday brunch, you don't want to have to march halfway to Timbuktu to go to the bathroom and get back. And that is really my only gripe with Border Grill. And that's not a big enough gripe to keep me going back. I love Border Grill. And if I'm in Vegas on a Sunday, I want brunch at Border Grill. It's that good. But Michelin star, it's not just about being a great restaurant. It is being about elite. It's about being that upper echelon. And if I got to leave your premises to go to the bathroom, you're not upper echelon, even though the food and the service really is world class. Morimoto, honestly, Bill, my one trip to Morimoto, I'd been hanging out with your brother-in-law, Mark, who we both miss very much since his passing. Mark and I had made some Vegas choices that rendered my memory a little bit fallible. I'm sure I had a great time. I'm a big fan of Iron Chef Morimoto, going back to Iron Chef Japan days. Enjoyed that show back in the early aughts when it would be on at like 2 a.m. But I can't comment on that from an educated point of view because I was not in proper restaurant evaluating mode when we were in that space.
That is fair. I'm just going to go ahead and take a stab at it and say that Mark had at least 1 Coors Light at some point in the day. I recall him having liked it, but yeah, you know what? We as a group may have missed that experience. I've been with some other groups. Yeah, no, Morimoto is phenomenal. It's just that open access. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. So, John, what are the places? What's on your list? Because I can't imagine, but that I don't want to argue with your list because that's what I do.
Well, let's see what happens. Both of mine are off-strip locations. I think one of the things that's changed in Las Vegas since 2009, Las Vegas has always had great dining opportunities in their tourist areas. But when you talk to locals or listen to podcasts by foodie locals, once you got out of the tourist areas, it was like every other suburban joint in America with your normal assortment of national chains, your Outback Steakhouse and the like. But in the last decade, Las Vegas has developed into a premier foodie destination for locals and in the tourist areas. So yeah, we can bemoan that the $1.99 shrimp cocktail is gone, but what's replaced it is that I'll argue with anybody and their dog. Vegas is the best food city in America. So my 2 choices are both off the strip. First, over in Chinatown, I'm going to make the case for Partage. Not merely because it is fine French dining that costs less than those strip locations that previously won because they don't have to pay for the crazy real estate on the strip. That gets factored in. But honestly, Bill, and I know this is a point of contention, I enjoy the food at Partage better than Le Cirque. I really do. And loved that. Now, I have a feeling you're going to argue with me about the other two because we talked about food, service, and ambiance. I got a feeling you're going to have a bone to pick on the other two.
So the food was absolutely fantastic. I'm unwilling to say it's better or worse than Le Cirque because I've only eaten there the once and I don't have a valid sample set. But the setting in the strip mall, I don't know, it's a little bit weird. Once you get inside, the decor is lovely and the service was perfectly functional. But the problem to me was that the service was merely functional. Like the presentation of the dishes seemed very rushed and a little robotic. If you go into Le Cirque, you may have Frederick, the sommelier, the lead sommelier, tell you about his village in France and how they produce this grape, right? Like there's something about the storytelling at Le Cirque which enhances it that didn't happen the time we were at Partage. So the other thing is that at Le Cirque, like I went in there once about a year ago. I was in town with my buddy Ryan. I didn't have the money to eat at Le Cirque, right? I usually don't. So I went into their bar and I was at their bar with my buddy Ryan and my waiter, Martin, was in the main dining room. He saw me through a little passageway at the bar, came up, addressed me by name, said, "It's so good to see you. We've missed you." And then he said, "At Le Cirque, we do things a little differently." And then he just started bringing me free snacks because I had been there a half a dozen times before. And that's a level of service that Partage just doesn't match.
And I will grant you the service at Partage is not as good at Le Cirque. I will say, I think that you and I were processing that night a little bit differently. I had drugged Bill to Golden Tiki, and Bill subscribes to the theory that when you are in high-end mode, you are only in high-end mode. And I am quite willing to go from white trash to fancy at the drop of a hat. So my experience of being in a dive tiki bar where Fat Elvis was, as we were leaving, Fat Elvis was coming in to do a set because he used to perform there. Now he's back over on the strip again. The juxtaposition was entertaining for me, and I was in a really good rum-infused mood. And Bill, as I recall, you were a little put out because we were crossing the streams. Because you do, to be fair, you will put the pinky down and you will do a dive, but you don't like to mix your dive and your luxury. It's kind of one or the other. And I like the dichotomy.
So you have accurately described the situation. The other problem there, beyond just my preference for what kind of a night are we having, let's have that night, was that the drinks at that tiki bar were so syrupy sweet that it messes up the ability to enjoy the food. But John, what is the other place? Because I'm looking ahead on the run sheet now, and I feel like we may agree. So talk about your other place.
So the other option is Esther's Kitchen in the Arts District. Now, I don't think there's any argument Esther's gets there on food. Esther's is the place that if you go listen to like one of the Foodie Insider, if you're a big enough restaurant nerd that you want to go listen to Food and Loathing in Las Vegas, when they interview chefs and say, "Hey chef, when you have family come to town, where do you take them?" And we're talking some of the chefs at some of the Michelin star places we just talked about. The answer is almost always, "Oh yeah, when I have friends or family in town, we go to Esther's." Right? So James Tree has created a menu that captivates the people who are already cooking Michelin star food. The ambiance at Esther's, it's not fancy, but it does feel well thought out. You have an open view to the kitchen. You could see the artistry of the bread and the pasta making. And there's something about it. It feels like a really elevated neighborhood restaurant. It has that energy of the mixture of locals and tourists. Love that. And the service, again, not as chatty as Le Cirque, but on point. I don't think we ever wanted for much of anything in our time there. So I would say Esther's hits all three criteria.
So You might be right. I'm not willing to say yes, but I'm also not willing to say no because the food was squarely phenomenal, and let's face it, a much better price. I recall the service actually being phenomenal, right? Like I recall the service being great. To me, it's the setting. It is so super crowded and loud in there that it's hard for me to enjoy my conversation with whoever I'm dining with. And they've got a technical flaw in that when you go in there and you wait, because you're always going to have to, even if you got a reservation, you're going to have to wait a couple minutes for your table. Like that's how life works. And sometimes longer. There's no real place for you to wait. You can't sit at the bar and enjoy the Okay, I guess you could go back through the restaurant and go to the bar if they had a seat. But the I don't know, the kind of crowded and loud ambiance of the place, maybe not. But again, if that's where you want to eat, if like when it's your night to call dinner, if you say Esther's, cool. Just know that next time we are taking a motor vehicle to get there instead of walking through like a series of homeless people to get there.
Yeah, I will say the walk from the plaza to Esther's was an adventure in urban living. But
yes,
on the other hand, as a diabetic, I really needed that walk for my pancreas to handle all of that bread and pasta.
Fair. Well,
so it wasn't a lovely walk, but it was necessary.
Well, John, should we move on and tell our listeners about the news?
I suppose we shall. Scott of Vital Vegas reported on the reopening of Morimoto at the MGM Grand, and the photos that he shared look absolutely fantastic. So, Bill, we just talked about this as one of your possible Michelin star choices. You think we're about overdue for a revisit?
We absolutely are. That's actually going to be the next time I can afford to go to Vegas. So, listeners, if you've been following the podcast for a while, thank you so much. Please tell your friends. And if you're new here, welcome. We are glad you are here. But for those of you who are new, I have changed jobs over the last year and a half. That is why I no longer live in the vast barren wastelands of Texas, Western Texas, but instead in God's country here in Alabama. As a result of that, I don't have the money to get to Vegas right now as often as I would like to. The next time I do get to Vegas and I can afford a really high-end meal, I absolutely think it's Morimoto because, again, it's a little bit of a different thing. And I kind of want to see what happened after these renovations because that was my one gripe holding it back from Michelin star space. So, yeah, I would give it a shot. So, John, just like based on the cuisine and the fact that he's an Iron Chef, you want to go with, or you want me to schedule that trip with somebody else?
Assuming my wallet will allow, because I'm actually, I am choosing to change jobs in the not too distant future, and that will involve some degree of a pay cut. And I don't know how big of a pay cut, but I'm doing this for my own mental well-being. So yeah, my travel may be a little bit up and down. I will say I'm having the moral conundrum. I can't afford to gamble a bunch when I take my wife to Vegas in a couple of weeks, but I'm dangerously close to getting gold status, which would get rid of resort fees for a year. And I could afford to do more Vegas in 2026 if I could find the money to waste on gambling here at the tail end of 2025. Anyway, yeah, that's a possibility.
Don't chase comps, John.
Yeah, I know. I give that advice on this very podcast, but I'm so close, Bill.
So close. Scott also shared that popular downtown biker bar Hogs and Heifers, which recently lost their lease at the downtown Grand back in, I think it was July, is going to run a pop-up in the former Sand Dollar space on Plaza for 6 months while getting their new home in the Arts District ready. And John, when I read that news story, my main reaction is that I'm sad that the Sand Dollar was gone because on the one hand, was it a fancy bar? No. But those were actually bartenders who cared about their craft and made great cocktails and didn't charge the far end of forever for them. So, I mean, yay, Hogs and Heifers. Yay, they've got a space, a transitory space. I'm mostly still just sad that the old place is gone.
I hear you. I do think that the model of local bands playing original music, which I love that kind of place, isn't what you want for tourists. And we've talked about this. You need something that the drunk tourists could sing along to. So I understand why it didn't make it, but I am sad. I will say that if you're looking for finely crafted cocktails, that's not what Hogs and Heifer does. Hogs and Heifer is the inspiration behind Coyote Ugly, the movie. And so Coyote Ugly, the bar, at the New York is an imitator. So what they got at Hogs and Heifers is cute girls with a lot of tattoos who pour beer and pour whiskey and make fun of old men who stare at them. So it sounds like a lot of fun, but I'm gonna miss the sand dollar.
Well, and conveniently, you and I aren't old men, so they wouldn't make fun of us, John.
Oh, sure. That's how that goes. All right. Las Vegas locally shared that Las Vegas added 4,400 jobs in September of 2025, up from 2,300 new jobs in September of 2024. And critically, the hospitality industry was the largest sector who was adding jobs. So while tourism is down for the year, and we and anybody else with a social media platform have covered executives being laid off and all of the bad news, there's some good news because these properties are investing on customer service facing employees to take care of the people who are still coming. So, Bill, what's your read on this?
So we've talked before about the fact that Vegas is a place where real people actually live. I am thrilled that there are still jobs. I'm thrilled there is still a functioning economy. I'm trying to figure out, though, where these new jobs came from, because hospitality is obvious. Well, I mean, not just in these jobs, right? It's the largest part of the Vegas economy. And while total revenues are a little bit up, the number of visitors is down, which means there are fewer people required to serve those visitors. I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm always just happy when good people can find work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I wonder if it might be from some of the locals places are thriving in their gambling revenues. So maybe even though there's fewer visitors coming, those locals are getting out and enjoying their life a little more.
Maybe, and good for them. Well, in other news, Eater Vegas covered, and we've talked before about the restaurant Gymkhana, but Eater Vegas covered their actual opening. It was in their London location, a Michelin-starred Indian restaurant. They now have a location at Aria, and to be clear, the Michelin stars don't transfer, but it's still an outpost of a place where the original had one. It is the Vegas outlet, the Vegas outlet of this fine dining chain. And this is what's interesting for an Indian restaurant, has beef dishes on the menu. So, John A., how interested are you in trying Gymkhana? Because, it's not going to be cheap. And B, what do you think about there being beef dishes at the Indian restaurant?
So, one, again, if my budget allows, I love Indian food, and I've never had a chance to do fine dining Indian food. Now, out here in West Texas, the best Indian restaurant around had to move from one city to another because the health department in Midland County shut them down. So they had to set up shop in a Ramada in Odessa. Folks, if you've ever watched Landman or Friday Night Lights, you can get the picture of what a place must be like if the health department in Midland County shut them down and Odessa said, y'all come on over. It's not fine dining. If you can ignore the creepy crawlies, the food's good, but it's not fine dining. I would like to try Indian fine dining. Never had that experience. As far as the beef goes, I actually find that pork and chicken dishes really allow the spices in Indian cuisine to shine. And Indian is one of the few cuisines where I will actively consider eating the meatless options. I am a carnivore by heart, but in Indian cooking, they have some marvelous vegetarian dishes. Normally, I say vegetables are what my food eats, but I would get down with this place, but I'm probably skipping the beef.
So I would actually try the beef, and here's why. One, a place with this kind of a reputation is not going to risk that reputation by serving something they don't know how to cook. And two, India is an enormous country. So while something on the order of 80% of the country is Hindu, which culturally would choose not to, would be religiously forbidden from eating beef, something on the order of 15% of the country is Muslim, and 5% of the country are members of other Christians or other groups. What that means is in a country of over 1 billion people, you've got something like 200 million people who eat beef. Somebody in that country is going to know how to put some cow in some curry and make it delicious. And regardless of who it is that runs Gymkhana, they're just not going to risk their reputation with something they don't know how to do. So I would absolutely try that.
Well, I'm sure it's good. It's just not up my alley. Eater Vegas also shared word, and by the way, Scott of Idle Vegas had this too, that Walk On Sports Bistro at Harrah's has closed. Now, Bill, I know you and I both enjoy a good trip to Walk Ons in our hometowns. But is the fact that Walk Ons is such a ubiquitous chain, at least in the American South, why it was doomed in Vegas?
I don't know that it's why it was doomed, but it's why I never went. Listeners, don't go to Vegas to recreate your life at home. If you're going to live your life at home, save a couple $1,000 and live your best life there, right? To be clear, I'm not making fun of walk-ons. I love it. Their Makers 46 Old Fashioned is great. I was there for a work gathering in my town last month. Walk-ons is phenomenal. If I can get it in my town, John can get it in his town. There are a lot of places where it's available. Try something new when you're in Vegas. And yeah, sure, maybe that's why this one closed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Look, their fried mozzarella logs are a thing of beauty. Their sliders are great. A lot of things on their menu that I really love. Their old fashioned's phenomenal. But look, don't eat anything in Vegas you can get at home. I do not understand the people waiting in line for Denny's. Why? Right? There are so many phenomenal things. Las Vegas is a foodie city. Don't do that. The other thing is Walk-Ons is a sports bar. Turns out that several of the big sports books in Vegas have phenomenal places for you to sit and watch sports. Not just Circa. There's some other, like Mandalay Bay's got a great one. South Point has a great one. There's all these great places to go watch sports ball. On the Strip, you can go down to Brewdog. I think there's unique sports watching opportunities in Vegas. And this just wasn't a good fit.
Fair. Well, John, do you mind if I talk about college football and the bet you might place for just a minute?
I know I can't stop you.
Well, and that's fair, right? So the college football playoff brackets are out. And we're not talking about this so much for sports' sake, although sure, that's a part of it, but mostly because one of the major parts of a trip to Vegas is the experience of betting on sports. And there were some disappointments. Notre Dame, most notably, wasn't able to get a seat in the playoffs. BYU was excluded. In good news, proving that truth, justice, and beauty still exist in the world, that publicly funded institution in Austin was excluded from the playoffs. So there was some good news there. But in the first round, number 12, Tulane, is going to go to number 5, Oregon. Ladies and gentlemen, when you bet on sports, never ever bet on your team. Never bet with your heart, bet with your head. I don't know exactly what the line is on that game. I actually wouldn't bet on Oregon versus James Madison. Yeah. I wouldn't bet on Oregon versus James Madison as a game because that the spread's going to be too hard to predict. But I know I would take the over because Oregon's going to drop about 500 million points on James Madison, who's then going to score a touchdown in junk time. Right. So whatever that over-under is, I would take.
Yeah.
The next game is going to be number 6, Mississippi, which doesn't have a coach, against number 11, Tulane. That game is going to be played in Oxford, Mississippi. I anticipate all of the points being scored. Again, rather than betting the game, even against the point spread, I would look and see what the over-under is. Then number 7, my Texas A&M Aggies are going to host a game at Kyle Field against the University of Miami. I won't bet on that game because it's my team. All I know is that I wish I had the time and money to go because that would be amazing. And then number 8, Oklahoma is going to host number 9, Alabama. Everyone here in Alabama is talking about how Alabama was done wrong. And because I wish to live to see the end of my day, I simply don't comment and finish enjoying my drink. The other teams in the playoff are number 4, Texas Tech, which is just a little bit to John's north. Number 3, Georgia, the SEC champions. Number 2, Ohio State. And somehow the words I'm about to utter, John, are mathematically correct. Number 1, undefeated 13-0 Big Ten champ, Indiana. which makes no sense to me either. I'm a little surprised that Ohio State didn't drop further, like maybe to third, maybe fourth, but whatever. That is your bracket. So, John, what is your reaction to college football playoffs, and how would you place your bets?
I'm with you. Usually on these kind of games, I'm probably going to be looking for over-unders. I think that's the way to go. There's not a lot of these outcomes that I would want to put money on because, again, there's ones that I could tell you who's going to win the game. But Vegas is really good at balancing those point spreads to even out the money. And you never know when some team is going to overperform and keep a game that should have been a blowout way closer than everybody thought it would. You never know when a team, maybe they're mad that they thought they should be number 2 and they got seeded number 6 and they come out and they underperform because they're in their feelings about it. Point spreads are really tricky, I think, in college football. I trust them more in the pros than I do in college ball. But I think the over-unders are a really good way to go with this. Plus, it's fun because when you take the over, my favorite bet to make is to take the over. And here's why. Every score is a celebration. Don't care who scored. I'm rooting for touchdowns. I'm rooting for the kickers. I hope it's a shootout. So taking the over is just kind of fun, you know?
It is. Well, John, one of the segments we sometimes try to have is Vegas WTF because, it's Vegas. John, has any WTF news happened in Las Vegas lately?
Oh my goodness, I love this one. I'm going to paint you a picture, listeners. I want you to imagine it's rodeo week, one of the busiest tourist weeks all year in Vegas. Rednecks everywhere as far as the eye could see. It's Saturday night. It's 7:00. It is the busiest dining hour on the busiest week of the year. And a gentleman who proclaims himself as a Las Vegas local, meaning he should know better, named Nathan Harm, decided that he would attempt to walk into Esther's Kitchen, which we just mentioned is a super busy place, on the busiest possible night of the busiest week of the year. And when Esther's could not accommodate him with a table due to being booked, Nathan R. of Las Vegas, Nevada, decided that for the first time in his life, he would set himself up a Yelp account purely so that he could post this. System was down, so decided to stop taking walk-in or anyone, which was so unprofessional, at 7:00 on a Saturday night. So he decided to Karen up with an incoherent rant that he's mad that the super busy restaurant didn't squeeze him into a space they didn't have because he didn't bother to make a reservation. Side note, my wife and I will be eating at Esther's Kitchen on a Monday. Esther's books tables 30 days out, exactly 30 days before I wanted to eat there. I was on that website booking it. If thou desirest Esther, thou shalt make a reservation. Okay? Now, another side story. I've got friends in the food industry, which is one of the reasons I listen to things like Food and Loathing in Las Vegas. I'm fascinated. I've worked in the food industry twice. Bill, I know you have too. Most of us have had our time in it, but I've had friends who've been in that industry. I'm fascinated by it sometimes in my head. I fantasize about being in the industry. My firstborn was in the culinary world. My 18-year-old is getting ready for a career in culinary. I love this profession. I've had friends that own restaurants, and I always caution them the same thing. Don't comment back to negative reviews on Yelp and other places. You're going to look like a fool. There was a big restaurant and brewery in my region that built one of the most beautiful restaurants our region has ever seen, but they failed spectacularly because they ran a terrible restaurant. And the owner's wife went out of her way to get into arguments with every negative review, which only sped up the demise of that restaurant. So normally I would say, don't do this. But Chef James Trees, who's regarded as not only one of the greatest chefs in Las Vegas, but also genuinely one of the nicest people in the food industry in Las Vegas, actually took the opportunity to respond to Nathan. Chef Trees said, "So just to be clear, we are fully booked And because our open table wasn't updating, we didn't take walk-ins. So we could honor the 385 people we had on the books at 7 p.m. when you walked in to the busiest off-the-strip restaurant on a Saturday night and expected to just get a table FML. Chef Trees, that is poetry, sir. We have your back. And to Nathan R. of Las Vegas, Nevada, who's upset, two pieces of advice. One, next time, get a reservation. And two, if you ever feel like being that guy that goes on and leaves the review, even though the business did nothing wrong and you're just feeling bad, don't be that guy.
Yeah. The other lesson that I'd really like to share with our listeners is this. The Vegas where you could just roll into where you want to eat no longer exists. At least for whatever your main meal is of the day, you kind of need to make reservations. Like even if you're going to the buffet, you might consider, if it's a nice buffet, making reservations, buying a line pass, whatever. There is a certain amount of planning you now kind of have to do to enjoy your Vegas trip. John, when you and Lori go in a couple of weeks, I'm assuming you've already got reservations for all your dinners, right?
Well, actually, no, but that's because of the way that now my wife, let's see, I would like her to kiss me at some point, so I'm not going to call her cheap because she listens to the podcast. My wife is frugal.
I'll kiss you, John.
So generally, Derek will get jealous. Generally, Lori and I will have one great sit down dining experience when we travel together, and that's going to be Esther's on this trip. And then the rest of the trip, what we tend to do is hit up happy hours. And most of the time, not only do you not need a reservation for happy hours, if you're going to, and by the way, this is a baller on a budget tip. Lots of fine dining restaurants have happy hour specials in their bars and lounges. You can look it up online before you go to Vegas to plan it out. The thing is, they will rarely take reservations for the bar and lounge, and the happy hour deals are almost always in the bar and lounge. And my wife, what she wants to do is she wants to get cheap prices on really great Vegas food. And the way you do that is happy hour. So we are going to do dinner at Esther's Kitchen as a showcase meal. But our other 2 evenings, our plan is to pick one of the places at the Cosmo that does social hour, or maybe Ocean Prime, which is right there by Cosmo, that also has a world-class seafood restaurant that also has a great happy hour. We're going to hit up those happy hours and dine early. And the best thing about dining early, because we're not so old that we can eat dinner at 4 and then be done. We're not going back to watch Wheel of Fortune and Matlock. No, that's not what's going to happen. But we're going to hit happy hour at, 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon and have a medium-sized meal. And then later that night, we'll go to Secret Pizza. We'll go to Lardo. We'll go to one of the fast casual places. I'll also say this, Bill. Some of the fast casual places in Vegas have food that rivals a sit-down restaurant where you need a reservation. The sandwiches at Lardo are in my top 5 meals that I've ever had in Vegas. We just discussed Michelin star places, right? They're that good. So I'm going to say that's the caveat. Bill's right. If you want to sit down, good dining experience, reservations are critical. But if you forgot to make reservations, or if the place you wanted was booked, there are some things you can get at a walk-up. You just got to realize you're going to a food hall or you're going to a happy hour.
Yeah, and you're obviously correct, but even your strategy requires some planning, because if you're planning to have a nice meal at happy hour prices, that means you've got to know who has a happy hour deal. When is their happy hour? Is it at 4 or at 5 or whatever, right? So, Paul, no, you don't need reservations. You absolutely, to follow your strategy, do have to plan.
Yes, like we've already planned, and we haven't decided which night, but one night we are going to Jaleo by Chef Jose Andres. The last time we were at Vidar, not actually at Cosmo, but you might as well be. The last time we were eating most of our meals at Cosmo, we did the happy hour at China Poblano. It was glorious, but now we're going to go even fancier with Chef Andres and do Jaleo. Our plan is to go in, other than the charcuterie board, we're not going to do that. We're literally going to order everything on the menu and get 2 or 3 drinks each. And even with tax and tip, we'll get out the door under $200, getting to sample a wide range of Chef Andres's greatest dishes. So it's a good way to do things.
Awesome. Well, John, is that about everything we have for tonight?
I think it is, Bill. So why don't you tell our listeners where they can find more exciting Dine, Drink, Travel, and Dine, Drink Vegas content?
Folks, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where we bring you short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip. Things like 5 or 10 minutes on a particular hotel room or a particular restaurant. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel, where we cover the rest of our travel adventures, things like my trips to Ireland, or more importantly, the executive lounges in the Las Vegas airport. You can also find us on essentially every social media platform at Dine Drink Travel, where I'm likely to interact with John on X. John, where can they find you on X?
I'm at Dine Drink John, where I'm more than happy to talk to you about Las Vegas, about coffee, about adult beverages, about fine food, barbecue, and why the Dallas Cowboys are giving us false hope because they're not going to make the playoffs. We're so glad you took the time to listen to us. If you've got a friend planning a trip to Vegas who could benefit from our sage wisdom, or a mortal enemy that hates listening to old, fat, southern white guys drink and talk and drink and talk, please share our podcast. You'll be helping us grow an audience so that we can keep bringing you this amazing content. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.